Electricast.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, I hope all is well with you today. This is another special Wednesday morning episode, and I'm drinking a hot cup of Bottom Gun coffee from my friends at bottomguncoffee.com. I have another great show lined up for you, but before we get started, I just wanted to mention my latest leadership book. It's called You Have the Watch, and it's available on my website and on Amazon. It's a #1 new release and a bestseller on Amazon, and I'm excited about this new book because it's not actually a book. It's a guided journal for leaders that will take you through an entire year of leadership training. There are 50 themes in the book, and each day you'll reflect on a different facet of that theme. This journal is designed to be on your desk at work for you to read and reflect on for 15 minutes each morning. Leadership skills are like any other skills. You need to practice them to get better at them. This journal helps you practice those skills. So if you're interested in this guided journal, you should go to youhavethewatch.com or Amazon and pick up a copy today. Now, if you're looking for other ways to support what I do on this show, purchase any one of my books at johnsrennie.com, and podcast listeners can use the discount code DEEP at checkout to get additional savings. I also wanted to mention that Deep Leadership is now ranked in the top 2.5% most popular shows out of 3 million podcasts globally, according to ListenScore. So I wanted to thank each and every one of you for listening in and sharing these episodes with your friends. You have helped this podcast grow into a top-performing show, so thank you very much. Well, that is it. Today we're going to be talking about how to build a strong hybrid team culture. Remote work and hybrid teams are something that every leader is dealing with these days. So how do we build a strong team culture in this new work environment? Well, my guest today has the answer. Gustavo Razzetti is the CEO and founder of Fearless Culture and the author of a new book called Remote Not Distant. He's going to help us navigate this new way to work. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20 plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Gustavo Razzetti. Gustavo is the CEO and founder of Fearless Culture, a culture design consultancy that helps teams do the best work of their lives. And for more than 20 years, he's helped leaders from Fortune 500s, startups, nonprofits, and everything in between, including every continent on Earth except Antarctica. His latest book, Remote Not Distant, helps leaders build a strong hybrid team culture. And I'm excited to have him on the show to talk about the idea of designing a company culture, especially in a hybrid workplace, something we've been seeing more and more of. So, Gustavo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, John. Very excited about the conversation. I'm looking forward to have some engaging chat so we can hopefully inspire your audience.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this as well. First of all, I want to just give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about it yourself, and then where did you develop such a passion for company cultures?
That's a great point. I think that my career, like many people, has basically gone in different directions. So I can picture a very logic storytelling. I can tell you about the different experiments I went through. But most importantly, I was a regular employee, so to speak. At some point, I was promoting to become a leader. I became CEO of different companies, and then I turned into a consultant. And for me, what's important is what drove me to culture is first, when I was, for lack of a better term, regular employee, making my rounds up the ladder, there were leaders that really inspired me. There were places that really helped me do my best work, and there were places that I really, really suffered. When I became a leader, I screw up exponentially. So basically, I amplify the same mistakes as some leaders did. And at some point, I think I learned. So now as a consultant, I want to bring the best of both worlds, those things that I basically will help me thrive as an employee, but also make sure that the mistakes I made when I was leading my clients don't repeat the same. At least they made some new ones.
I think that's fantastic because I think experience is often the best teacher, but we often learn from our mistakes. So it's nice to hear that you're trying to help your clients not have the same struggles and the same mistakes that you found in your career. So I love that, and the idea of having both good bosses and bad bosses, having both good cultures and bad cultures, made you say, we need to focus in on this, and culture is really critical to business. So I really appreciate that. That's great. And in fact, that's what I want to talk about. Workplace culture, we talk about it, and we know that it's critical for business success. And we've talked about it on this podcast, but help us understand what that really is. Because, I mean, culture seems, we can understand certain things in business, but culture is a little bit nebulous. Help us understand, give us something that helps us understand what culture really is.
Absolutely. I think that it is nebulous, but it's not so nebulous. So I think it's like culture is like air, right? If it's healthy, if it's fresh, usually you don't notice it. You just breathe and you keep alive. But however, I mean, I'm looking at your books there. No, I have the watch. When you're in a submarine in a very high-performing, very challenging environment, and you're very close to your colleagues, if that air is toxic, you're really, really going to notice. You want to surface to make sure you can So that's the point of our culture. When things are working all right, it feels natural. It feels organic. People are doing great work. They're collaborating, and people tend to be happy, or at least they're enjoying what they're doing. When it's broken, all the wars happen, especially from behavior. So selfish behaviors, competitive behavior, aggressive behaviors start to surface. I developed a tool a couple of years ago, many years ago now, and that we use with different clients to understand what culture is all about, which is a canvas. Basically, it's a way to map the different elements of culture. And we talk about what does culture encompasses. So it includes the purpose. So why are we here? What's our role within the team? What's the impact that we're trying to create? It includes values, but also behaviors, which I think that this is going to resonate with you. What behaviors do we want to reward? But most important, what are we going to punish? Sometimes companies fail to basically create a healthy culture because they promote a purpose, they promote certain values, but then what they reward through action or inaction is the opposite. So if you say that you are collaborative or you're creative or innovative, but then when people want to bring up a new idea, challenge the status quo, you silence them or you punish them, then you're not necessarily innovative. If you promote the most selfish manager, then you're not collaborative. So that's that kind of thing. It's important. And then there are other elements of culture that are more what we call the emotional side of culture. Psychological safety. Do people feel safe to speak up, to participate, to engage? Feedback, how we help each other learn and grow, and rituals, which are ways of celebrating who we are. Lastly, the last component of culture is more functional. It includes meetings, decision-making, and norms and rules. So when you can capture all those elements, culture not only becomes more visible, but more concrete. It's not such an abstract construct.
That makes a lot of sense. And I really like what you said in that you can say your purpose, values, behaviors are here, but it's really your actions that determine what the culture is. So if you're inconsistent with what your stated values are, then that's the culture. What actually is happening is actually what the culture is, not what you say you want it to be, which is very interesting. And it's a lot of same things with leadership. If we say one thing and do another thing, we're inconsistent, and it hurts us as leaders and our ability to influence others. People don't trust us when we're inconsistent. So when you have good company culture, when things are when your stated purpose, values, and behaviors, and you're consistent with those in the way you operate, what are some advantages? Companies that have good company cultures, what are some of those advantages that they have in the marketplace?
I mean, from a fact perspective, there's a lot of research from the different consulting firms that show that those companies are more open to change, they are quicker to adapt, they're more innovative, and they do and deliver better business results. And of course, overall, people like to stay there and people are happier. I think that another thing that's important when it comes to operating, things tend to be more fluid. No, so there's no such thing as a perfect company. To let's make sure that that's a clear point. But however, people are not fighting against each other. People know what they need to do, and you don't need to have the manager on top of people. Things happen because people are committed. They have clear marching orders, and actually they want the company to succeed. When the culture is broken, not only people get lost and there's a lot of infighting, but actually sometimes people say, I don't care. And when people stop caring, then everything goes south like this.
Oh my gosh, infighting and apathy. I could tell stories in my years in corporate. I've been in cultures where it was constant infighting, and that was like what you did. That's how you survived, and then the people underneath, it was just apathetic. It was just complete apathy. So yeah, I've been in broken cultures, and I can definitely feel. I can tell you this, that not much got done because it was just conflict, and everyone was protecting their own turf, and nothing really ever progressed. And it was not a company which was open to innovation and change. We were just in battle for our own little fiefdoms, and it was it was not a good place to work. I did not like working there.
Absolutely. And I think no one does, and we all unfortunately experience one or two of those type of organizations. There are two signals. You mentioned how can we make sure that culture becomes more evident. One signal, if you go to a culture that's kind of toxic or fearful, the first point is when you meet the receptionist.
Oh,
no, rather than being like welcoming, whatever, you're going to see there's a lot of anxiety. If you're going to meet with one of the higher ups, the CEO, there's going to be a lot of different steps and barriers and controls that you need to go through, and people are going to be very anxious to make sure they don't screw up. That's one typical. No, when the first, if people are relaxed, they're welcoming, they're having fun, then you can get that signal. Another signal is the meetings, how they manage their meetings. So cultures that are driven by fear, the meetings are designed, consciously or not, around the leader. It's about pleasing the leader. It's very political. No one wants to screw up. The leader is going to make all the decisions. They're going to be the first to speak up. So those things are important to understand where your culture is. Is it a collaborative, open culture, healthy, or it's more driven by fear or, to your point, toxicity when it goes to the extreme?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen cultures like that, and I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, I run a small business right now, a small manufacturing business, and you come into my place, it's like coming in, it's wide open because we're it's very tight. We're like a family. And so, you know, there's going to be jokes. There's going to be like yesterday we had a couple of dogs in the plant. You know, it's very laid back, and we get our job done, but we act like a family, and it shows, you know. And so when visitors come, they're like, this place is neat, you know. I remember we had a customer come in, and it just happened to be around that we were having our annual Thanksgiving dinner, and we just invited him since he was in the plant. So join us, you know, sit down. Well, you can join us for Thanksgiving dinner. And he said, you know, I've been working my whole adult life, and I've never seen anything like this. You know, where this just a relaxed family kind of environment. And I think we've worked hard to build that culture, and we've worked hard to build a place where people like to come to work. And you can tell, and our customers can tell, and our visitors can tell, which is neat because, like you said, you sense it, right? When you walk in the front door, is this a place that's uptight, or is this a place that, you know, where it's open and collaborative? I think you can really sense that.
Definitely. I mean, you can sense the air. I think that's a great point. You mentioned that you said we put a lot of effort. And that's something that some people sometimes forget. They think that culture is going to emerge organically. Of course, there are many elements, like culture happens at a team level, culture happens at a family level or a friendship level. No? Every group has a culture that brings those people together, or actually brings them apart. If you talk about family, if you're controlling as a parent, then your children are going to do whatever they want, and actually the opposite that you try to dictate. If you create an environment of participation that's healthy, that's transparent, then that's the feedback that you're going to get. So I think that it's critical what you were mentioning. It's not just about size, but it's about design. So there are large companies that are healthy, and there are companies that have maybe 3-5 employees and they're really toxic.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. So it's not just size. That makes a lot of sense. So one of the things that struck me with your writings and what you do is this idea of designing a culture. That seems, it's like a designer suit. I was trying to help us understand, what does it mean when you say I'm going to design the culture?
Perfect question. I like that you mentioned designing a suit, because I'm going to start from that metaphor and then like a zoom out. When you're designing something, you're designing it for the person that's going to wear. So when I help my clients, I don't design the culture I want them to have, but it's the culture that they want to have, the culture that's going to help them succeed. But also in the end, when they're the ones wearing that suit, is it going to look them on them or not? And that's very important to keep in mind. We're not doing the work for our egos. We're doing the work that's going to help that particular company. So each engagement, each work with different companies is unique, and it's a challenge of its own. Design, sometimes when I started the discipline of culture design a few years ago, building on my experience in marketing and innovation, that we apply the human-centered design, many people felt, oh, you cannot design culture. So my response is, yes, you can, but also people associate design with control. And they say, no, culture happens organic. Well, design doesn't mean that we come out of the blue with, hey, this is how your culture is going to look like. We leverage both organic things, we leverage things that are already in place happening in that culture, and we help that organization grow what's already working, but also take care of what's not working. It's like taking care of a garden. No, of course, the plants and the trees are going to grow in the direction they want, but you need to make sure that you design what type of, do you want a Zen Japanese style garden, or more of a English kind of with more bricks and control and roses and bushes? So you want more of a French Renaissance symmetric type of garden. You need to have some criteria of what you're looking for, and then make sure that you prepare the soil and the right fertilizers and the right seeds and the right species. But then those species and that ecosystem is going to thrive and grow on its own. So as a leader, designing culture means, okay, I'm going to set the environment, but then you need to step back and let people do their thing, grow.
So it's interesting that you said that, because when you think of, a lot of times leaders think they have to control everything. And what you're saying is that we design the way we want it to look like, but we allow people to grow into that and to fit into the design, if you will. And I like that a lot, because it's not about control. It is, in a way. In other words, you have an idea of what you want, but the people are going to take to it different ways, and you have to deal with the people in that culture and how they're responding and how they're I'll give you an example. If we say, we're going to have an open and honest dialogues in this company, right? And yet you have someone that's like lying or is deceitful or not violating. So that's when the leader needs to step in and, with that individual and say, it's not consistent with what we're trying to do here. So I would imagine that the leader's actions are important to reinforce the behaviors that you're trying to get. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, you need to remove the weeds, so that don't get in the way and don't hurt the people. And toxic, are there animals that are eating the fruit that the tree are contributing to the garden? So definitely. However, you mentioned, for example, transparency. And I think it's important because not everyone is equal. So there are some people that are more extroverted. They like to talk more. There are people that are more shy, and both can be great contributors. And actually, people that talk the less actually are better for the team than those who are always talking. But our society rewards the first. What happens is that when, for example, we say we want to be transparent, that means not necessarily hiding, not being toxic. Some people might be more outspoken and other people might not, but that doesn't mean they're not being transparent. So I think it's important that we calibrate those ideas to fit the different team members rather than push the culture just for a particular group.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Leadership skills are like any other skills. You need to practice them to get better at them. Best-selling leadership author John S. Rennie knows this. That's why he's written a new book called You Have the Watch. It's a guided journal for leaders designed to take you through an entire year of leadership training. By the end of the year, you will master 50 of the most important leadership skills. If you want to have a greater impact on the results and people in your organization, go to youhavethewatch.com and pick up your copy today.
This episode is brought to you by the Fraternity of Excellence. The Fraternity of Excellence is an online and real-world community for men who are looking to improve in all areas of their lives. The men of FOE are working together to become better husbands, fathers, and leaders at work and in their communities. They live by a simple philosophy: as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Now, I've been a member for more than 3 years, and for me, I finally found a brotherhood of men that I was missing from my time in the military. Now, I love being around guys who are dedicated to becoming a better version of themselves. So if you're interested in becoming a man of excellence as well, go to fraternityofexcellence.com, or you can reach out directly to me to learn more. So I want to talk about your new book because I think it's pretty exciting. It's called Remote and Not Distance. And by the way, Remote Not Distant. I keep saying distance. Remote Not Distant, which is
rename it. So now I know the title of my new one.
It's phenomenal. It's such a great name because we're dealing with, remote and hybrid workplaces now, and we don't want to be distant. That's really important. So I really love the name of the book. And in this, you're tackling the idea of designing a culture in this hybrid remote world. So why? I mean, obviously times have changed, and we have a new workplace kind of emerging. But why did you feel it was important to tackle the subject at this time?
That's great. I think that since the pandemic started, and even before that, we were doing a lot of work remotely with different companies. And then when everything collapsed, the world was disrupted, companies were afraid. What do we do now? And we helped many of our clients adapt to working from home. But that was more like a band-aid. The problem is now companies didn't have an option, right? The pandemic forced everyone to work from home. And actually, most of the companies that were reluctant to do that, even for one day, they had to do it full-fledged. The point is, then, when now we have an option and people can say, well, what are we going to do next? Many companies are defaulting to, hey, let's go back to how things used to be. Office-centric, a 9 to 5-ish. I say 5-ish because it's 9 to 7, 8.
Right.
And the point is, it's this is a lesson in disguise. I mean, everything that happens in life happens for a reason. And rather than learning and improving our workplace, are we just going to go back to things like they used to be? So my point is I started working with different teams, helping them understand what used to work before the pandemic, what didn't work before the pandemic. What are the new behaviors, the new practices, the new things that came and were discovered? I mean, people realize, hey, I love my job, but I don't want to design my life around my job. I like to wake up in the morning, take care of my kids, take them to school, and then maybe start working a little bit later and maybe I like this new flexibility where I can choose, hey, if I need to go to the office, I go to the office, but if I can save that commute time and do my work from home and take a break and do some chores and then get back to work, I like that stuff as well. The point is, there are many beliefs that leaders have that are resisting this new work environment. First is a lack of trust. Before the pandemic, leaders believed that if people weren't visible, they weren't working. So they create this culture of endless meetings, endless emails, because people need to show that they're busy to be perceived as efficient. So rather than encouraging people to be great at what they do, they encourage a culture of presentism. Then we create a culture of virtual presentism. We know that people are working at least 1 hour more per day just to show off to their colleagues and their bosses to see, hey, I'm here. Not because they're doing work, but basically they're creating Zoom calls, they are sending emails just to say, hey, I'm alive and a hard worker, so those are really bad practices. And the purpose of the book is to help companies rethink and how to bring together the best of both worlds, the in-person and the remote. remote give us flexibility, remote give us time to work at our own pace, give us the distance for us to have perspective in making decisions, be more rational about it. And the in-person is about which tasks require that well together, like building belonging, creating connection between team members, but also challenges that require that we're all in the same place and we can tackle them together. So that's kind of the approach and why I wrote that book.
I think it's really important that it's really timely. As you went through the book and you did some research, what are some companies or leaders or teams that are doing a really good job with this, this hybrid culture? Do you have any stories and what's made those situations work as well as they have?
Absolutely. And one thing that's interesting, I interviewed different types of companies, from large, from smaller, from more tech-driven companies. Some people only focus on tech-driven companies, which for them is easier to shift to a more flexible environment because of the work they do. But for example, one thing that's interesting, I also talked to Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae is a government-funded, for the audience, that provides, it's behind most of the mortgages in the US. And it's interesting how in a government-based company, they embrace a hybrid and they allow team members, which is one critical thing to happen. They allow team members to create their own experiences, to design their own stuff. And one thing that I uncovered in Fannie Mae in particular is rituals. So in order to stay connected, team members have a time of the day in which each of them go and go for a walk with their pets. They're all in different states, different cities, but they're all with their phones talking about life and connecting. So it's a way that team that used to be very engaged personally still have time to network, to connect with each other, to talk about life, to talk about their schools, their children's schools, to talk about their pets, and then they go back to work. So it's very powerful. I mean, like the things that they do. They also connect when one team member is going through some family issues, whatever, they get into one call, the person shares what's going through, they look for advice, and the team member becomes a support kind of entity for that colleague. So I can tell you, you might not see your colleagues, you might not be working, but you can be really, really connected, really close to them. Or as it happened, I mean, I always use the example, there are many couples that live under the same roof, sleep on the same bed, but they don't have any love, any passion. Well, that a team is working in the same physical space doesn't guarantee that connectedness. Yeah. So you have to work towards that.
I love it. I love the story of the walking your dogs and having a private or have a discussion, a personal discussion, more personal, not business, and having that connection. I know, I've even seen companies doing like these virtual happy hours on a Friday afternoon where people pop on Zoom and it's just, it's very relaxed and it's, everybody's got a cocktail and they're just, talking about life and not necessarily about business. So you can connect. And one of the things I noticed too, when we went to more of a hybrid and more of a, remote work environment, I noticed something interesting is we got a chance to look into people's homes. And this was interesting because, typically we only see each other in the office, right? And so when you go into remote and you're actually in somebody's room and their dog comes in or their child comes in or their spouse comes in and you're like, I've never seen that person before. Like I didn't know who their spouse was. And so I think we actually open ourselves up to knowing our colleagues better because we're peering into their world a little bit. Is that something you've seen as well? Or that's certainly something I noticed.
Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant observation because in the end, we were filtering. I always thought that we aim for a work-life balance, which is a paradox, And now we realize, stop building a wall between who we are at home and who we are at work, and let's integrate. I've never met so many babies, children, pets in my life, like in the past 2 or 3 years, because of the work I do. We do lots of workshops online, mostly with different teams from all over the world. And at some point, people felt like, oh, sorry, my baby's interrupting. Sorry, that's my cat. And now it has become like, hey, this is my cat. And people stop hiding, stop feeling embarrassed about it. They actually embrace it. And I think that brings a very human component to teams.
Yes.
It brings excuses for conversation, but also you feel that, oh, now I get to know you. I get to know, look, I look at your books, I look at your background, the ship, and I'm trying to figure out, what are those things there on the wall that I cannot read? Is that an award or recognition or what is it? And so it sparks conversation. In the past, you were just in your office and we were censoring a very important aspect. So once again, when people feel, oh, it feels so distant, I feel, well, I think that to your point, we're getting a window to everyone's homes. That's interesting. And on the other hand, leaders used to have their corner office, and now they are also one of these small rectangles in a Zoom call. So it has leveled the playing field for everyone.
You're the equal size square now. So suddenly the leader isn't at the end of the conference table. And absolutely, I think that's been good too. I noticed that too. I did a lot of remote training during the time, and it's been personally, I actually like it because the chat function can, you're having a training and there's questions on the chat. And if you've got a moderator that can ask the questions, you get, what I like about it is the introverts, you get to hear from them where you typically didn't in a normal meeting because they were too afraid to speak up, or they were, the extroverts were, dominating the time. So now in these kind of meetings, the extroverts might be talking, but the introverts have now the chat where they can put something in there, which ends up getting to the floor where they get the opportunity to get recognized where they wouldn't before. So I actually do like when I'm training remote because of the chat function, and there's some neat features. There's some neat things you can do with that makes the experience even better, I think. So I think there's some ways that we can use the technology to actually deepen our connection. And at least that's what I noticed.
Absolutely. I think that many leaders became more aware about, okay, we can use the chat. When we are brainstorming, rather than jumping to ideas, let's give everyone like 5 minutes to reflect, write their ideas, so introverts can think, they can write, they don't need to feel the pressure or the rush. And then, so a lot of things that improve. But once again, I think that remote has allowed us to do things better in many aspects. But when we talk about hybrid, we're not saying, hey, forget about the office, forget about the in-person experience. It's about both, but being more mindful about when you need to get together. And if you get together, it's not the routine, it's not the interruption when you're in your work or cubicle and someone comes and start talking about life and you're working. It's about, let's get together to build a strong team. Let's spend time designing the experience, spending time to make sure that we interact better, or let's get in a room to tackle a challenge that's so hard that if we don't get all in the same place, we're not going to be able to solve it.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I've heard stories where people are having things like a home day where it's scheduled on the calendar where everybody comes in that day and it's a chance and they bring in food. And so so there's there's a connection day built into the calendar and everybody can kind of plan for it, that's the day, most people are going to be coming in. And I like that as well. So yeah, I think you're right. Don't forget about the human connection as well when you're designing this culture. So what's the role of the leader here? This is a leadership podcast. What's the role of the leader when it comes to designing, building, and maintaining a culture?
That's very important. I think that the culture design process is a co-creation, so it's not necessarily democratic in the sense that everyone has a saying. It's participatory in the sense that we gather input from different employees to design what the company values are going to be. But in the end, the one who defines what the desired culture is the leader. So defining is key responsibility of the leader. Then the demonstrating, which is the hardest part. You talk about aligning values with behavior. Well, we need to start with the leaders. Leaders need to say, hey, when you have the watch, this is what is expected. No? So if you don't model the behavior, if you want to be transparent, well, the first to be transparent needs to be the leader. And the third aspect of leaders related to culture is demanding. So I'm going to behave like this as a leader, but these are my clear expectations to my team members. So what's okay, what's not okay, showing on time, being transparent, being not backstabbing your colleagues, and those kind of things. So summarizing, the leader defines the culture, needs to codify it, needs to share with the people so everyone understand what's expected. The leader demonstrate their behavior, they role model it, and then they need to set clear expectations, demands for their team members.
Very powerful, very important role that the leader plays in building and maintaining absolutely the culture. That's really powerful. Well, this has been fantastic conversation. I've learned a lot, and I think we've just scratched the surface on the work that you did with this new book. The new book is called Remote, Not Distant, and I really highly recommend it, especially those companies that are still going into either remote or using a hybrid culture now. This is our workplace. This is a great way to build, maintain, and create a great culture in your company. So how can people find out more about your company and this new book?
Absolutely. The book is available in many online retailers. I mean, if you shop on Amazon, you're going to find it there, but it's also on Target, Walmart, online, or Barnes and Nobles. So if you search for Remote Not Distant, you're going to find it pretty quickly. And if you want to connect with me, the best way is LinkedIn. So luckily, there's no other Gustavo Razzetti with Z-T. So and I'm very active there, always publishing stuff. So articles and free tools. If you're looking for more advice, I like to share everything that I learned through my practice with people. So that's the best way to get started. And then you can go also to our website, which is fearlessculture.design. And once again, we have a weekly newsletter. It's free with lots of advice for companies, lots of free resources that you can download as well.
Okay, fantastic. We'll put links in the show notes for those resources. And Gustavo, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing this. This has been really fascinating. And I think, again, leaders, culture is really important, and you play a major role in designing, building, and maintaining that culture. So I highly encourage you to look up Gustavo and his on LinkedIn, connect with him. We'll go to his website, find these resources, and build a better culture in your company. So Gustavo, thank you again for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. I'm looking forward to connect with your audience. I really enjoy it, and I love that you are bringing your personal experience as a former employee and as an entrepreneur and leader in terms of what it takes and how difficult it is to build a culture. And you're doing a great job. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you very much. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
Hey, what's happening out there, everybody? This is Lawrence Ross, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about my podcast, The Lawrence Ross Show.
Egomaniac.
It's a 2-hour weekly exploration into my mind. I also do sketches, celebrity impersonations.
You're out of order!
And I also do song parodies. Not too shabby for a blind guy.
Not only are you visually impaired, but you are geographically impaired.
New episodes are released every Friday. Check it out on your favorite podcasting platform or listen to it here on Society 13 on Electrocast.
If you're a working professional wondering what's next for your career, you've come to the right place. Whether you're looking for a promotion, growth, or a potential career transition, look no further. With over 30 years working in a variety of industries, I share my insider knowledge with those ready to get ahead on Career Advancement with Craig Ansell. Tune in to get your strategies for success.